Welcome to AviatorDB News Briefing. Today is Thursday, August 20th, 2026. First, breaking news headlines. Caspian Airlines MD-83 damaged by shrapnel in Tehran airport strike. Aviator Airlines MD-83 destroyed in strikes on Tehran-Mehrabad airport. In other news, American Airlines O'Hare blown tires prompt FAA investigation. Ryanair engine failure, NTSB report confirms fan blade out, bird strike. Philly Learjet Crash, NTSB Releases Investigation Docket. Sydney Airport near Miss Cluster sparks, urgent safety scrutiny. Now for the details. Tehran-Mehrabad Airport, Iran, March 31st, 2026. A Caspian Airlines McDonnell Douglas MD-83, registration E-Pass, sustained substantial damage from shrapnel during joint U.S.-Israeli airstrikes at Tehran-Mehrabad Airport on March 31, 2026. The aircraft was parked on the tarmac at the time of the attack. No fatalities were reported in connection with damage to this specific airframe. The damage occurred amid a broader series of coordinated strikes targeting Iranian military and infrastructure sites. The New York Times and Anadolu Agency confirmed that Mehrabad Airport was among the primary targets. The Israel Defense Forces, IDF, stated they destroyed 16 aircraft operated by the IRGC Quds Force at the facility. Witnesses near the airport reported seeing commercial aircraft burning on the tarmac and heavy smoke rising from the area. Registration EPCAS has been subject to prior safety scrutiny. On April 12, 2021, the aircraft was involved in a serious incident during a domestic flight from Tehran to Kish Island, when an autopilot malfunction caused the MD-83 to climb approximately 400 feet above its assigned altitude, triggering a TCAS resolution advisory involving a Qatar Airways Airbus A350-1000. Iran's Civil Aviation Organization, CAO, classified the event as a serious incident. Caspian Airlines operates a small fleet of approximately 5 MD-83 aircraft on domestic and regional routes, many based at Tehran-Mehrabad. The carrier's dependence on older Western-built aircraft is a direct consequence of international sanctions that restrict Iranian airlines' access to newer models. The MD-80 series has suffered additional losses during the March 2026 conflict. An ATA Airlines MD-80, registration EPTAM, was reported destroyed at Mehrabad on March 16, 2026, in an earlier wave of strikes. Source: Aviation Safety Network ASN, incident record. Tehran, Iran, March 16, 2026. A McDonnell Douglas MD-83 operated by ATA Airlines was destroyed on the ground at Tehran-Mehrabad International Airport, THROII, during joint U.S. and Israeli airstrikes on March 16, 2026. The aircraft, registered as EPTAM, was parked and unoccupied at the time of the strike, and no fatalities were reported. The destruction of the MD-83 occurred as part of a broader air campaign targeting Iranian government and military assets. The Israeli military claimed to have destroyed an aircraft formerly used by the late Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei during the overnight strikes at Mehrabad. Reports from Iran International indicate that aircraft used for the official transport of senior Islamic Republic officials and IRGC Quds Force logistics were also targeted in precision strikes on parked aircraft and support infrastructure. Iran's Civil Aviation Organization, CAO, condemned the attacks. CAO head Abuzar Sharuti stated that more than 6 civilian aircraft registered in Iran were destroyed and over 5 others sustained serious damage from direct hits at Mehrabad. Sharuti described the destruction of aircraft used exclusively for civil purposes as a blatant violation of international aviation conventions and humanitarian law, specifically citing the Chicago Convention. Iran has since lodged a formal protest with the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO. The loss of EPTAM is part of a pattern of damage to civilian aircraft at Mehrabad throughout March 2026. Earlier reports indicated the destruction of an Ryanair Airbus, 2 Fokker aircraft belonging to Karoon Airlines, and a Pars Air passenger plane. A Caspian Airlines MD-80 was also reported damaged by shrapnel during further strikes at the airport on March 31, 2026. ATA Airlines, a civilian scheduled passenger carrier based in Tabriz, operated the MD-83 as part of its domestic fleet. The aircraft was an older second-hand airframe, typical of the sanctions-era equipment relied upon by Iranian carriers. Source: Aviation Safety Network, ASN, CH Aviation, Iran International. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, on August 18th, announced it will investigate an American Airlines blown tire incident that occurred during landing at Chicago O'Hare the previous day. The regulatory agency's confirmation comes as the Chicago Department of Aviation, CDA, works with airline partners to determine the cause of the event, which officials described as rare. American Airlines Flight 386, a Boeing 737-800 arriving from New York, LaGuardia, landed safely at Chicago O'Hare on August 17 at approximately 2 p.m. local time before blowing two tires. Passengers deplaned via mobile stairs on the taxiway and were bused to the terminal. American Airlines confirmed no injuries and said the aircraft was removed from service for inspection. The FAA LS probe is part of a wider review after two separate tire-related incidents occurred at O'Hare within hours of each other Monday, the second involving a United Airlines flight. CDA officials said they are examining whether weather or specific runway conditions contributed to the failures. While tire blowouts are uncommon, aircraft are engineered with redundancy to maintain directional control during such events, and no official cause has been identified in either incident. The NTSB on August 13, 2026, released a preliminary report on investigation DCA 26FA274, detailing a July 10th engine failure involving a Malta Air Boeing 737-800 operated under the Ryanair brand. The report confirms that a fan blade out (FBO) event in the Wright CFM56 7 billion engine sent debris into the fuselage, shattering a passenger window at row 11 and causing rapid decompression during climb. Fan blade number 10 fractured at the dovetail root area at approximately 16,000 feet. Metallurgical analysis using a scanning electron microscope revealed fatigue striations consistent with high-amplitude fatigue HF. Investigators also found bird remains inside the engine and noted that the flight crew had reported 4 suspected bird strikes involving the same engine in the preceding 12 months, a detail the NTSB is continuing to examine for its relationship to the blade fatigue. The flight had departed Thessaloniki, SKG, bound for Memmingen when the failure occurred. One passenger suffered serious injuries after being partially drawn toward the breached window before crew and fellow passengers intervened. The flight crew declared an emergency and returned safely to Thessaloniki. Safety analysts have drawn comparisons to the 2018 Southwest Airlines Flight 1380 accident, which also involved a CFM56 7 billion fan blade failure and a window breach. The NTSB has not yet determined a probable cause and says its investigation is ongoing. The NTSB on August 19th released the public docket for the Philly Learjet crash, unveiling more than 1,500 pages of factual material, including new videos, images, and technical reports. The investigation centers on a Learjet 55 medevac aircraft that crashed into a residential and commercial area near Northeast Philadelphia Airport on July 2, 2026, killing multiple people. Investigators are examining whether somatographic illusion and associated spatial disorientation influenced the crew's control inputs during the takeoff and climb phase. The phenomenon occurs when linear acceleration is misinterpreted by the inner ear as a nose-up pitch, potentially prompting pilots to apply incorrect nose-down inputs, a particular hazard in low-visibility conditions. The docket also flags a critical configuration discrepancy. The Operational Factors Group factual report indicates the pitch trim setting at the moment of impact was well outside the range specified in the official checklist for that phase of flight. Separately, the NTSB identified a regulatory paperwork mix-up over which FAA rules applied to the Mexican-registered aircraft operating in U.S. airspace. The agency emphasized that the released materials do not include a probable cause determination. A final report will be issued at the conclusion of the investigation. Australian aviation authorities are facing intensified pressure following an August 18th investigative report warning that a cluster of recent runway incidents at Sydney Airport, YSY, could have catastrophic consequences if systemic safety failures go unaddressed. The ABC News report highlights a pattern of runway incursions and loss of separation events that aviation experts say reflect broader operational vulnerabilities rather than isolated human errors. The renewed scrutiny follows several notable incidents, including a Sydney airport near miss on October 9th, in which a Jetstar Airbus A320 applied heavy braking to avoid a towed Qatar Airways Boeing 777. Later the same day, Virgin Australia flight VA555 executed a rejected takeoff after spotting a Qantas Boeing 737 crossing the active runway. Those events, combined with a July 27th incursion involving Qantas and Qantas Link, have prompted the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, ATSB, to open formal investigations into all three occurrences. Investigators are examining whether chronic staffing shortages and rostering pressures at Air Services Australia contributed to the incidents. Federal Transport Minister Catherine King said the Jetstar Qatar event could have been far more serious, and confirmed that a tug operator and an air traffic control ground worker were stood down pending the outcome of the probe. While Air Services Australia maintains that aircraft remained separated by more than 1 kilometer during the Virgin Qantas event, the ATSB has classified the cluster as a significant transport safety concern. Investigations remain ongoing as authorities determine whether procedural errors or communication breakdowns represent a systemic problem at Australia's busiest airport. That's all we have for today. You can get the latest aviation news at aviatordb.com.